Okay, so this is a fucking weird movie. Alright, so before I start, I gotta say, this one is kind of weird, not just as a movie, but just as a review prospect, because according to the IMDb page, it came out in 2018, but I didn't see a trailer for it until 2019. Matter of fact, I saw the trailer while waiting in the parking lot for my friend Elizabeth to show up so we could go see The Upside, the very first movie I reviewed for the year. So I count this as a 2019 film, even though it may have come out in 2018. All right, but it's the first one of these I've reviewed on DVD, and now I'm giving you a review sometime after because it never showed up. I didn't even know. I saw the trailer, thought, okay, that's something I might check out, and then never heard anything about it until I was at Walmart the other day and saw the DVD. I was like, okay, let's give this a shot. So let's talk about it. So, as I said, this is a bizarre little movie, and bizarre in a way that only a film called The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot can be. I'm not even sure where to start in terms of talking about it. I guess, what do you really need to know about the story? Because the story, it's all there in the title. It is about the man who killed Hitler and then the Bigfoot. So let's start here. Let's start there. So Sam Elliott, is our title character. The man who killed Hitler and then Bigfoot. But when we meet him, he's only killed Hitler. So he's an older man. The movie takes place in, the 80s. He's living in a small town, and he's just kind of this lonely, quiet guy. He's kind of distant from everybody, as you would expect. But now here, first of all, let's talk about the thing that works about this movie. There are several things that work fairly well about this movie. But let's talk about the main thing that works about this movie, and that is getting Sam Elliott. All right? And let me diverge here for just a second. All these memes, I don't like memes usually as a general, but all those memes that go around a couple years ago, Chuck Norris is so tough, under his beard he just has another fist. Chuck Norris eats bald eagles for breakfast, and all this, shit. And to all you folks out there who buy into that, I have just one thing to say. Fuck Chuck Norris. Sam Elliott is the manliest man that ever manned. End of discussion. Sam Elliott's mustache could kick Chuck Norris's beard's ass. And that is the weirdest sentence I have ever said in my life. But it is true. There is a charisma and energy about Sam Elliott that just radiates cool. Not since Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin has somebody been that effortlessly cool. He doesn't do anything to make himself cool. He just is, by his mannerisms, the way he carries himself, that voice. So getting Sam Elliott for this role, however they did it, is the best thing they did, because the good things about this movie are made great by his presence. And one of the things I really like about this movie is that, so Sam Elliott is this badass kind of living in this small town, but they don't play him like your typical action movie old guy badass or secret black ops operative who's living in a small town. He's a sad, broken guy who, just doesn't fit in. He feels like he's lost himself and the best parts of himself. And then we see through flashbacks him, killing Hitler and all this. And then some government agents come and tell him that there's a Bigfoot. Just drop it on you like this. There's a Bigfoot in Canada, and the Bigfoot is a carrier for a plague. And Sam Elliott just happens to be, by luck, one of the few people who would be immune to it. All the rest being children or old people or dead or not having his training. So they ask him to go in and kill Bigfoot. So how do these two stories link up? Well, okay, let's not even talk about that. Let's talk about this. So for the first 45 minutes of this movie, I was minimally invested. I liked the bits with Sam Elliott. The rest of it was okay. I felt like the flashbacks to the to show to the 40s when he goes, or the 30s even, when he goes and kills Hitler and all that. The flashbacks looked a little too much like a bunch of college kids found a cachet of World War II costumes and said, let's put on a show, alfalfa, which is kind of what happened, I'm sure. I mean, this isn't a big budget picture. But the World War II things felt very, I don't know, they didn't feel authentic. So I'm going along in this movie for about the first 45 minutes, just going, okay, it's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And then it happens. There is a moment in this movie where everything shifts on a dime. And from that moment on, even with the rest of the film having problems, I was 100% invested. And it is this monologue that Sam Elliott gives to the government agents who come to recruit him, because this one government agent is baiting him a little bit and trying to find out, did you really do this? Did you really kill Hitler? And he's dropping on, and Sam Elliott just finally, in a way that only Sam Elliott could, looks at him and says, yeah, I did it. I killed him. And it didn't mean a thing. It didn't change anything. They just went and got imposters, dressed them up in the costume with the mustache and everything, and just had them go out there and do it. I killed a man, but the monster lived on. And that monologue is given with such power, such anger, that suddenly the whole movie becomes clear. And I cannot think of another film where that has happened. It is such a brilliant... The monologue is written very well, first off. And secondly, Sam Elliott giving a Sam Elliott performance as only Sam Elliott can sells the shit out of it. And what we realize we're looking at is this is a man who killed somebody. And as far as we know, from the flashbacks and the information, it was the only person he ever killed. And unlike a lot of movies like this, when we see him in flashbacks, we don't get this indication that there's a dark killer behind the surface. He's a normal guy. He stutters. He's a little awkward around his girlfriend. He worked at a hat store. He's just kind of a regular good person. And what we really get the feeling is taking this life, even if it was the life of fucking Hitler, destroyed him. It pained him. And then on top of that, it cost him everything. It cost him his identity of himself while he's gone. They never show it while he's gone. His girlfriend, whom we wanted to marry, dies. We don't see how. We were just told she died young. So he's off doing this, and while he's gone, he loses everything. And then to find out it didn't mean shit. It didn't change anything. So what we're seeing here is a character that sacrificed every part of himself only to be told and only to really feel that he did it for nothing. Nothing changed. What an interesting character to spend time with. And from that minute on, I was invested in that character, and I was invested in his journey, and the things that happened to him afterwards, I was there for, you know. So I really love those parts of this movie, but that doesn't change the fact that it is not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. The biggest problem with it is it's a young director, from the little bit of the bonus features I watched, a young director who, as far as I could tell, only directed a short film prior to this. And he's trying to mash up 3 different genres, a character piece, a war movie, and a monster movie into one creation. And structurally, in terms of the story, I understand where it was coming from. You know, he killed one monster and it didn't mean anything. So now to find his redemption arc, he has to go and kill another monster to save the world, essentially, again, from a virus. So structurally, in terms of his arc, it makes sense. In practice, the pieces don't fit together very well. As I said, the flashbacks with him and his girlfriend are incredibly well done. The actor playing him as a young man, I forget his name, Alan Turner, I think, is very good. And the young lady playing his girlfriend is very, very sweet and just has a radiant personality. And their scenes together are really good. There's a scene they do when right before he ships out, where they go for a walk and they're talking, and they're just talking about things, you know. And it's really bittersweet and really well done. So I like that. But the stuff with the war is, again, hokey. It doesn't feel authentic, which, again, I'm starting to think was kind of the purpose, because the opening scene is him coming into the building where Hitler's being kept, and like going through this almost very comical checkpoint thing, and he kills Hitler with a gun it's like a man with a golden gun that he makes out of a cigarette lighter and something he takes out of his shoe and a pen, you know. So it's tonally, it's kind of a lower place. Then the part with Bigfoot, I don't know, all of that, it's sad, because again, in terms of the story arc, I understand it, and that's kind of where he gets his redemption. But honestly, you could have cut that whole chunk of the movie out, and the movie still would have been, you could have just spent time with that character. I would have much preferred, even though it wouldn't have had quite as interesting of a title, you know, maybe just called The Man Who Killed Hitler, is if instead of, you know, this whole Bigfoot thing, if he's just being pursued by this government agent who wants to know the truth, and somehow you get the character arc out of that. I don't know. Or maybe he's after a serial killer or something. I don't know. It's just the whole thing with Bigfoot just didn't work very well. The creature looks cheap. It has to. That's not a knock on it. I'm just saying. And I mean, the fight with it's just, I don't know. It's just not very good. There's this whole thing where he stabs the Bigfoot and it pukes on him. And I'm like, oh God, really? You know, so there's a whole chunk of this movie that just doesn't work. But man, then after that, it goes back to him kind of in his life, and all that stuff's great. You know, him kind of reaffirming his life. There's this box that he keeps under his bed, and you never see what's in it. Okay? And he's always on the cusp of opening it. And they hint that maybe it's the engagement ring he was going to give his girlfriend. I think it was his girlfriend's ashes, is what I think. And I like movies like that, where you are like, okay, what is it? And they don't tell you, and you get to kind of make the decision. It's a fun kind of interactive thing. Also, I feel like a big shout out needs to go out to Larry Miller, who plays Sam Elliott's brother in the film. And, Larry Miller is for those who don't know, is a comedian, a good friend of Jerry Seinfeld. He was originally supposed to play, I think he was one of the people who was in contention to play George Costanza before Jason Alexander came in. And, he's in a lot of the Christopher Guest movies. He was the dad in 10 Things I Hate About You. And, his on-screen persona is always such an obnoxious character. And his comedy I find very obnoxious. But man, does he do a good job. Very subtle acting. And he and Sam Elliott has some really touching scenes. There's a scene right before he goes out to hunt the Bigfoot where he's sitting there with Larry Miller and they're talking and he lays it all out. And he says, why are you, I just laid all this really weird shit on you. Why do you believe any of that? He says, because you're you. And a man is only one thing his whole life. A liar is a liar is a liar. A fancy man is fancy when he's fancy. An honest man is honest when he's honest, and you're honest. And it was like, because I was thinking that same question myself. I was like, boy, he just takes this whole thing about Bigfoot just very much in stride. But that response, I was like, I can work with that. So there's a really nice connection between Larry Miller and Sam Elliott in this film. And I wish they'd spent a little bit more time on that. So all in all, the parts of this movie I freaking love because they are so good. But that's the problem, is that I love the parts of this movie that I love so much that it makes me mad that I don't love the rest of it. I think this director, and I don't know his name, sorry. I think this director has got a voice. He has an eye. He's got stories he wants to tell. And I think he needs a little bit more time to fine-tune that voice and his visual style. But I truly believe that given maybe 5 more years, 10 maybe, if they're still doing them by then, he could be a guy kind of like James Gunn or Ryan Coogler or I had a third one. The Russo brothers, these guys who do small films and then are suddenly given, something like a Marvel movie to play with, and it turns out they can do something really fucking amazing. Ryan Coogler was always like that, but you know what I mean. I think this guy could be something and have a really interesting career. I just think he needs to fine tune a little bit because it's not quite there yet. But this is a fascinating little movie. And there was something else I wanted to say, and now I can't think of it. So it's one of the downsides of doing this thing just off the top of your head. I guess it's not that important. I'll think of it after I stop the camera. I do that a lot. Like, I'll be watching the movie and compiling thoughts. Okay, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. I come out, I do the review, and I turn the camera off. I go, oh shit, I had this really great point I wanted to make, and too late now. Anyway, well, I can't think of it, so fuck it. Let's wrap this up. So final grade for The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot, I'm going to go a B-. And honestly, this should be like maybe a C+, C movie. But again, things that worked so well. I can't say that this is going to be one of my favorite movies, but I think it's going to have some of my favorite scenes. This is a film I may not go back and rewatch the whole thing a lot, but I'm probably going to go back and rewatch a lot of scenes from it over and over and over again because I really like them. So, if you're curious, if the title gets you curious, because who wouldn't get curious from that title? Check it out. I think it's got some stuff in there to enjoy. All right. So, we are in the home stretch here, and I mean that seriously. We are in that last week where I'm getting ready to go back to Alaska for the summer. So, we're kind of in the last drive home reviews for a while. So, I've got a couple films I want to try to cram in before I head back. So, we'll try to get a few of these going. before I kind of go quiet for 2 months. But I hope you'll come along for the ride. And as always, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.